1340, 96.5 KVGC. Welcome to a Saturday morning visit with Douglas Viviani of Everything Old is New again tonight and tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. He and David Cohn anchor our evening programming with the show that examines our pop culture, where it came from, why it's still popular, and make radio fun again. Everything Old is New again. Douglas Viviani, good morning.
Good morning. It's great to hear from you. Great to be with you. It's a Saturday, and I just remember back in the day, we was talking last week a little bit about wrestling. Saturday afternoons, for me, in the 70s, was time for the WWE. Right? I remember WWF.
Yeah.
Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And the champion back in those days for like 11 years was Bruno Sammartino. 440 days, sold out Madison Square Garden for like 197 times, Shea Stadium a number of times, before all the sports, quote, entertainment came into wrestling, and he just passed away, 82 years old last week.
Did you watch wrestling with your family? Did your parents enjoy it too, or your grandparents, or any of your extended family? Did you watch it with them?
No, in fact, my grandfather down in Florida had a next-door neighbor who used to watch the wrestling, and he used to, sneer at it. My grandfather did. It was not really popular in that way. It was like sort of roller derby, too. It was sort of really up and coming, but not something that was very, revered. But I did watch it with my brother, the show. We discovered it, and we really rolled with it. Chief J. Strongbow and a bunch of the old characters that we used to love. Well, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember going to when my parents would go out on a Saturday night. My grandparents would watch me, so I would go to their house, and one of the local San Francisco affiliates had actually wrestling, and then at a later time, Channel 40 in Sacramento, which is the local Fox affiliate now, also had wrestling that they showed on Saturday evening, but it was actually filmed like on Thursday. And I had a chance to actually go. I had a girlfriend, a friend of not my girlfriend, but a girlfriend who her sister was the receptionist at the TV station in Sacramento, Channel 40. So we would get tickets, and there would only be like maybe 5 rows, and it would only be on 3 sides because the camera would be on one side of the ring, and it was real interesting to see it up close like that. And
that wasn't the NWO, was it?
No. That was it was whatever version of. I mean. The one of the wrestlers was The Rock's dad.
Okay.
Yep.
Rocky Maivia, was it?
No, that's his grandfather. That was his grandfather.
Okay.
But his father, it was the Soul Man something Johnson. The Soul Man something Johnson. Yeah. But that was back in the.
But you remember those days?
Oh,
I remember we went. It finally got a little more popular, and I convinced my dad to take us to the Nassau Coliseum. And we saw Blackjack Lanza, the Blackjack Brothers, a tag team match. We saw George the Animal Steel eating a crazy guy eating
the turnbuckle. Yeah, the turnbuckle. Yeah, the turnbuckle cover. Yeah.
And the turnbuckle. Sorry, and all of that. It was a blast. I remember, and I think sort of we discovered it ourselves as kids, so we claimed ownership of it. But it was real fun, but there was no TV, very little TV coverage of it like it is now. And if they had a big match in Madison Square Garden with Bruno Sammartino, you could never see it unless you went. There was no coverage of it. So it sold out. And Bruno Sammartino, was he regional? Do you remember him or no?
Yeah. I mean, he was no. Yeah, I remember him. I never saw him wrestle. He had retired by the time. I don't think he wrestled much after the 70s, did he, Douglas?
He went into 84.
Did he? Did he go there for?
Came back. 84 was right before he sold out Shea Stadium in a match against Larry Zbyszko, who was his big rival at the time, and the undercard was Andre the Giant against Hulk Hogan.
You know,
and that's so they were just changing over into WWF, not WWWF. He used to wrestle like real wrestling, and he got the the title from this guy called Buddy Rogers, who was the first Nature Boy, and he had his arch rivals were Gorilla Monsoon, if you remember him.
Yeah.
Ivan Koloff, George the Animal Steele, and of course there's Larry Zbyszko, who was his protege, who turned on him. So they had some stories, but he really objected to making it sports entertainment. He was with like the Luthez, if you remember these names, real old-time wrestling guys who did these bear hugs, and they didn't do all these acrobatics. They do these strength moves and things. They still did a pile drive. He was pile drived by a guy named Stan Hansen. They actually really broke his neck, really, because he didn't do it right. You know, the move where you got the guy upside down and you fall. So he really was a real pivotal character at the time. If it wasn't for him, I don't know if they would have been able to transfer it over into what they did with Hulk Hogan, because they may not have the money, because Sammartino sold out everywhere he went. They really loved this guy. And so, I don't know, he passed away. I just wanted to mention it to him. He's sort of a transition character from the old school wrestling to the new school, you know?
I think Larry Zbyszko, I think his family was involved in wrestling somehow. Like his dad was a promoter or something. You know, if you look into a lot of these wrestlers, a lot of them, it's like we were talking about the Hearts last week. It's a family business, and you know.
Well, it was regional too. It was like it wasn't like national now. So if you went to down south, there was one champion and one set of wrestlers, and they would then take their shtick to the north, and the northern guys would go south, for a couple of months, and vice versa, and out west and Midwest. And so there were like 30, 40 champions throughout the country, because they travel. We're talking about the 40s and 50s. The travel wasn't what it was now,
Right. Right.
And then Vince McMahon, had the idea. His dad had a regional. I think it was in, the Northeast. He had the territory here, and he said, "No, we're going national with this." And all the old-time promoters hated him really, really bad. So he put them all out of business.
Well, remember we were talking last week about what match would you like to see and so forth, and so the best match. I forgot one of the best matches that I ever saw was Mick Foley, and I think he was either Mankind or he was one of his, but it's just Mick. It's Mick Foley who.
Right.
So Mick Foley and the Undertaker in a cage match.
I think I remember that he jumped off the top of the rope, whatever, and there was what do you call it? Little tacks all over the. Do you remember this?
What happened was Undertaker had him. They were up on top of the cage, and the cage fell through. And they fell through the cage, boom. And actually, Mick Foley really got hurt, but they kept it up for a few more. You hear all these stories, if you've ever read books about it, guys actually get hurt, and they'll continue the match for a couple of more minutes, and then say, hey, pin me, I'm done. I got to get out of here. So.
Well, back in the day, before that time frame, in the 60s and 50s, they bring a razor blade in their pants, and they would cut themselves in the forehead to show the blood.
Yeah,
that was insane. But then later on, Mick Foley would actually bleed from the tacks on the. I don't know how the tacks got on the mat one time, but I remember that distinctly, all over his back and everything. He really sustained tremendous injuries.
He wrestled.
You're right. They really went through a lot of pain and suffering. I don't know if they're doing so much now. I don't really know what it's like now. Have you kept up with it at all?
I got a chance to see Dusty Rhodes one time in person, and you could see the little scars on his forehead.
Yeah.
Just like little, just maybe they were not quite a quarter of an inch, but they would cut themselves so it would bleed. But like we talked about last week, it's more of an adult soap opera now, and I wish they would get away from it and get back to the way it was. But hey, you know what? Everything changes, right? I guess a lot of
It's true. It's sad because it used to be almost like a comic book in a way. You know what I mean? It was just it was comical and fun and over the top, and all the storylines. You're right. It wasn't involving. The stuff it involves now, all this is too much reality. I don't know. Maybe the pendulum will swing back someday. We'll see. I don't know.
Who knows? Maybe when Leo is our age, it'll be back to the way it was.
It's a shame because it's one thing that I enjoy that I just can't share with the kids. That's for sure.
I'll tell you one thing that's not going to ever be the way it was. Art Bell passed away last week.
Yes.
1 week ago on Friday. And last Friday, not last night's show, but Thursday night's Friday morning show was a tribute to him on Coast to Coast. It was pretty good. He was an original. You know,
he was one of a kind. And he was. I tried to look up how many years he did this. I think he did it approximately 20 years, and then passed the baton when he had some personal problem with his third wife passing away, and he moved to the Philippines and so forth. And but he was interesting in that he is the only radio show that have these very unique topics. And the only thing that I loved all that stuff, and I loved him getting into all that. The only thing I didn't like, but I guess it's not fair, because that was part of the success, was that he allowed people to call in, and that's what he said he wanted to be, the voice or the ear, if you will, for people to tell whatever story they wanted to. And he would never challenge anyone about anything. He would just accept it as fact that these people were calling in with seeing shadow people or being abducted by a UFO and what have you. But that was part of the fun, I guess, huh?
Well, Douglas, really, who are we to? I mean, I think that's great. I mean, I don't know what your experience is. Maybe you got abducted by an alien on the way home from work last. I don't know.
It's true.
Tell me your story. Tell me your story.
The voice to these people, right? Everyone could call in and tell their story and not be ridiculed at all. And he had a distinctive voice too. You think it had anything to do with it? I don't know.
It was pretty funny because during the show, George Norrie interviewed some guests who, were friends of Art Bell's and so forth, and a number of them brought up the fact that Art always had left the line open for anybody from the grave that wanted to call. Call in. So they're joking about Art's probably going to call. Art will be calling in sometime today. So. And
he had a studio in his own home in the desert there in Vegas. So I think he was one of the first to, ahead of his time in the 80s, to set it all up at the house and broadcast from there, right?
He was a real big ham radio operator. And in fact, I have a couple of friends who are hams that actually, spoke with him a number of times. He was just a regular guy, and yeah, he actually was he lived in it's like it's like a suburb. It's Frump, it's a Frump, Nevada, which is just outside of Las Vegas. And he was the owner of the first radio station there, and then sold it after a while. But yeah, he had his studio set up in his,
But that was for the 80s. Was that ahead of its time?
Almost like a guy that has a studio set up in his basement. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yes. To answer your question, yes, he was ahead of his time in a number of ways, and I think truly he made radio fun. You know how we always talk about you and David making radio fun again? He made radio fun, and like we talked about last week, it's just one of those.
It was like a guilty pleasure. No one really talked about it at the water cooler, but regularly. But if you mentioned it, almost everybody knew who he was.
Exactly. So, hey, what's up this week with Everything Old is New Again?
I'll tell you. We have to hesitate, but I don't hesitate. We have to take a look at the new entertainment that's coming from Star Wars, the franchise that started in 1977, Star Trek, which started 52 years ago in 1966, because they're not going away. These two franchises this year, survived through these years and have produced brand new product that's making huge money and huge impact. Discovery with CBS All Access. It was very successful from their point of view. They've got a lot of new subscribers to this new subscription service to purchase and see any CBS show that's ever existed, and new shows. And, of course, Star Wars that just came out with The Last Jedi. We've got the Han Solo prequel coming out soon. And The Last Jedi made like $1 billion. So we've got one of our original guests, the original and favorite guest, the original member of the Everything Old is New Again Rogues Gallery, Dr. Richard Richter himself. And we're going to take a look at, have these new incarnations kept the original vision of their creators, or they've evolved for better or for worse? And what's going on here with these franchises? Are they going to continue to entertain us, and reach until maybe we reach the 23rd century. I don't know.
I'll tell you what was entertaining, and I don't like to keep bagging on David, but he did me wrong once, folks. You don't realize that. He cheated on a trivia contest, and so I'll never forgive him, even though I'm not, I am a forgiving guy. I don't hold grudges, but
we do have to do a rematch, by the way.
Except when it comes to David. Your co-hostess last week did a great job.
Oh, glad to hear that. Yes,
Yeah.
little Angelica was in studio for us, 9 years old, just turned 9, and she had some pointed questions for the chef extraordinaire, and I don't know. So you enjoyed her?
I enjoyed
her
it.
contribution, huh?
Did you talk to him beforehand and say, "Hey, my 9-year-old daughter is going to be involved in this," or did she just jump into it? And
You know, it's funny. It was so rushed. He called in a little bit late for our timing and so forth, and and I sort of didn't even let him know that she was there. So he sort of found out right on air. I may have just said it 3 seconds before we went, "Oh, by the way, here's my daughter Angelica, she's 9," and that was it. So I don't even know that if he recognized that she was like a special guest or is she a usual member of the show. It really wasn't explained. But it was fun, and he was very good with her, and Nick Stellino were talking about, and he certainly had a nice presentation about him,
yeah, no, it was a good show. I just wondered when I was listening to it. I was thinking, how did Douglas explain to this guy that his 9-year-old daughter is going to be asking questions, is going to be part of this too? So anyway,
I was while it was happening in my mind, I was thinking, you know what? If I need to create another show, how about a show with a 9-year-old kid's point of view of these things? It kind of would be interesting.
So I'm just going to give you a short answer to your long question about Star Trek, Star Wars, so forth, so on.
Yes.
The Star Trek, I can swing with. It's good. I like it. The new Star Wars, I hate to show my age, but it ain't my Star Wars, and I don't quite understand some of the new characters and the plot lines and stuff. But I'm glad that it's brand new, and there'll be a whole new generation that can say, "This is my Star Wars," and who am I to stop the train? I'm not going to step in front of it. I mean, you got a train going full speed with both of these, and I think that once Disney opens up the Star Wars land at Disneyland, that's going to even catapult it more. So
I agree, but you know what? It's sort of in spite of itself, because I agree with you 100%. Not to give it away, because maybe some people haven't seen it, but the latest movie and the ending of that movie and what happened with Luke Skywalker, it was such a disappointment. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, there we go. Tonight at 6 o'clock, tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, every Saturday and Sunday at 6 o'clock. In the evening, that is. Douglas Viviani and David Cohen host Everything Old is New Again, the show that examines our pop culture, where it came from, and why it's still popular. And like I always say, definitely, you two guys make radio fun again. Douglas Viviani, we'll see you in the squared circle sometime.
You got it.
That's what we'll do. I challenge David to a wrestling match.
I'll pass along the challenge. Let's see what happens next week.
Thanks, Douglas.
You got it.